viewers, and welcome to a series of programmes brought to you courtesy of Newry and Mourne District Council. Well, as most of you will be aware by this stage, Newry and Mourne District Council will cease to exist on the 31st of March, and on the 1st of April we'll be joining the new Super Council with our neighbours in Down, and we'll be henceforth known as Newry, Mourne and Down District Council. Well, Newry and Mourne District Council has been in existence since 1973. We're coming to the end of an era. We've been in existence, as I say, for 40 years. So over the next 5 weeks, I'll be chatting to councillors from each of the electoral areas to explore the legacy which we have left. And today I'm joined by Newry Town councillors, or Newry City councillors I should say. You're very welcome, gentlemen. We have Councillor John McCardle, Councillor Jack Patterson and Councillor Davy Hyland. So, Councillor Patterson, if I could start with you, because you've seen it from both sides. You were effectively an officer and then you turned to be a councillor, and you really had the distinction of serving 50 years in not only Newry and Mourne District Council but the old urban district councils. So can you tell me why did you decide to come into politics and what has been your main thrust? Well,
I was appointed Assistant Town Inspector, an officer in Newry Urban Council in March 1964. And then I was in that position until the changeover of local government in 1973, and then I was appointed cleansing supervisor within the Newry and Mourne Council. And I had the distinction, as you say, of being an officer, and also of been seeing the changeover in 1973, and then I'm still here for 2015 for the changeover.
And when did you actually go into politics per se as a politician?
I went into politics in 1993. I took early retirement, then I went into politics. A friend of mine who was an independent councillor in Newry asked if I would stand as an independent councillor. I was a bit reluctant at the start, so I decided then I would, because there's a number of people, because of my background working in local government, I decided I would stand as an independent councillor, and I was successful, along with Councillor Hyland. That was his first election then in 1993.
And what was your main areas of interest since you've been in the council?
Well, main areas of interest were really refuse and cleansing, and I was delighted that the new facilities, the amenity sites, that was I championed that, because I took in notice of motions for to place some of those facilities throughout Newry and Mourne area. Also the new refuse dump. There was an old refuse dump in Courtney Hill, close to where I lived, and it was just a big open quarry. We filled in the quarries. That was the policy then. There was no great control of them, no environmental control of them. So the council purchased land out at Mayo Bridge, and then Auchnagun. That was a big scheme, and I was very supportive of that. Also a number of other items throughout Newry and Mourne, particularly the swimming pool. I was in the old council when I was interviewing some people for the positions of lifesavers in the old urban council in 1969 when the pool was opened.
Right.
So I was delighted then that over the last couple of months, and on the 27th of March, I'll be here, hopefully,
for the opening of our new pool. Well, we're jumping ahead a bit. But Councillor Hyland, you came in the same year then as...
Same year as Jack, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to go into politics, and what is your...
Well, I have been active in local politics from 1981 on, after the hunger strikes. I joined Sinn Féin and had been very active in the Armagh Road, Lower Armagh Road, Mornview Park area. I lived in that area, and I would sell maybe 80 to 100 papers every week for the Unpublic. So, however, I was a full-time teacher in Belfast, but in the early 90s I received a number of death threats from loyalist groups, and as a result had to resign my job.
Right.
And when the elections came about in 93, people suggested I should go forward, and I did put my name forward and was happy to be elected along with Jack in 93.
Great. And what is your main area of interest then been since you've been in the council?
I suppose I would be really interested in housing. I'm in and out of the housing executive all the time, trying to represent people and seek accommodation for people in particular. Also interested in health and education, being from a teacher's background. But I think generally speaking, people come to councillors if they have issues and problems.
That's right. They're looking for solutions, really.
Looking for help.
Yeah.
No matter what problem they have, it's their problem, and it's a big problem. And I think councillors, while our powers were limited, we were able to get things done and to sort of get in contact with people who were decision makers, and therefore made it easier for people who had problems.
Okay. And Councillor McArdle, how many years are you in council now? When
Well, I'm 14 years a councillor, you know, and as Councillor Hyan pointed out to me earlier on, I first stood in 1985. I didn't get elected, and the following then 5 years I stood again. And the reason I didn't get elected was a colleague of mine lived in the St Patrick's area, so it was nearly impossible. So Seamus Mallon had said to me at one particular time, John, get out of that area, you'll not get. So then we moved over to live just off the Dublin Road. I worked very, very hard. I got elected then, and since that then, subsequent to that, I was elected the next 2 times. Good. So to me, I was always interested in politics. In my young days, I was great interest. I was a stamp collector. So that took me into geography. And if you're interested in geography, then leaders of the world. You're interested in politics. And what is politics? Politics is all about getting things done. Mm-hmm. And as an ordinary person, I had the great privilege of working for ordinary people. And sometimes something which you thought not that small, but to some people, small things were big things. And I had that, along with colleagues, I had that great privilege, whether it be roads, whether it be housing, whether it be planning, whether it be health or whatever. I had the privilege then of serving cross-community, and I place great emphasis on the cross-community factor.
Well, obviously you all come into politics for the very same reason, is to help people.
That's right.
But let's just go back and have a look at what has happened in Newry and Mourne District Council over the last 40 years. And you would know this, Jack, as an officer at the time, when we lost responsibility for roads and housing and that sort of thing. The main thrust of the council at that time, and the main remit, was the provision of community and leisure facilities, which were practically non-existent up until that point. And I think Raymond Turley was appointed as the Recreation Tourism Office to kickstart that. Do you think we have succeeded in providing good recreational and community facilities,
yes,
especially in Newry town?
Yeah. I think we did succeed, and I think you mentioned someone that I had great respect for, and Raymond Turley, who was an officer within the council, and he championed a lot of schemes and was very, very energetic in a number of schemes, and brought them to fruition. And you mentioned particularly the community centres, but I think one of the schemes that I had taken great pride in over the last few years was the public realm scheme. I think that was one of the nicest and best schemes that this council had
certainly
ever
the canal walkway is fantastic.
The whole thing, and I'm just hoping that the new council, when they come in, some of my colleagues have already lobbied them and say, look, can we get the other side of the Merchants Quay done? Now, the reason why I'm so proud of it, and so is a number of my colleagues within the council, is that there was a number of people within Newry, business people, not all of them, who were opposed to the scheme. And now I'm delighted to say that they've welcomed it, and that they're delighted that this scheme has finished this stage of it. So that was one of the things that I was very, very proud of.
Well, Davy, as a community activist, you were obviously delighted that community provision was made possible in the 70s and the 80s. Yeah. A lot of new community centres went up, and thinking of Barcroft, Meadow Armour Road, etc. Do you think that sort of brought the communities together right through the whole time of the Troubles and that sort of thing?
There were always great friendship in those communities, and the council's decision to build community centres just reinforced that and brought it out even further. And myself and with other councillors have always worked actively with the local community groups in trying to promote areas and safeguard them. One area that I think was very important and was linked into Raymond Turley was recreation. Myself and others were involved in sports and football teams. I played for Newry Shamrocks, and I played for local soccer teams. And in the early days, the provisions weren't that great, but over a period of time, the sports centre was built. We're in the process of getting a brand new swimming pool, which should be open now in a few weeks' time. And the pitches and things like that were all improved. If you look at the refurbishment of Park Esler on the One Point Road, that was magnificent, and outcome for GAA in this area. And local Gaelic clubs have flourished as a result. And there was often community grants given to those clubs, which helped them stabilise and help them put forward projects of their own. So I think a lot of worthwhile things were done, but I often got it in the neck from soccer people saying that our fields weren't as good as, say, Craigavon or other parts in the north or in the south. I suppose in some respects the playing fields could have been improved, but we did develop places like Nan Sands
yes,
Park, which was out in Derrylackey, which was a great achievement. And a lot of the soccer teams have flourished and gone on and really excelled themselves.
Right. Well, Councillor McArdle, as someone who's interested in health, obviously the provision of all of those playing facilities, added to the well-being of our community.
Well, community centres were vital because it promoted community. And what's community? It's a coming together of people, sharing ideas, getting things done, and that's vital. And the sports facilities, the development, that's excellent. I saw the figures last week. In Northern Ireland, 1 in 2 people are overweight. And that is extraordinary, 1 in 2 people. So the promotion of sports facilities, really, really vital. And it's great, we have had some marvellous developments in relation to that. Some people complain, and now we have got the new swimming pool coming on board. I'm a great believer in this business of trickle-down economics, trickle-down sports facilities. It would be marvellous if we had a swimming pool in Crossmaclean. We have one in Kilkeel. Warrenpoint, they lament they don't have sufficient facilities. But this is for everyone.
Yeah.
It's not just for Newry. The new swimming pool and the new sports facility that will be developed is for all of our area.
Well, that would be a great legacy.
And that's vitally important.
Obviously, tourism was just coming on board as well during the 70s and 80s, and I know we had the Canal Festival, which brought thousands of people into Newry for a week in July. That was a great draw, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. The Canal Festival was a good. Maureen Grant sort of was the officer in charge of that, and she was always promoting the Newry Canal, all the tub races and all that was on. That was brilliant. But I think going forward, if you look at the facility that we have at the Albert Basin, and I think there's great potential.
And what can be made of that?
Well, what can be made? There's proposals now to have a marina on it. There's a number, if you look at it at the moment, if you look at it, the number of boats, there's something like 25 boats moored in it at the minute.
Yeah.
And some people actually living in them. So that's keeping its life into what we wanted, is get life into the centre of Newry. We were trying to get people, there was a scheme invented a few years ago, but it went by the wayside. It was living over the shops, was to get people to move into
city centre.
Newry, and I thought that was a great idea. They were giving grants for people to do that. It matured to a certain degree in Lisburn and in the Coleraine councils, but it didn't just happen in Newry, and I was hoping that would happen, because I come from the centre of Newry. I was born and reared in Water Street, Mill Street area, and all my playing friends and mates throughout the years all lived over shops, because I just lived off Hill Street. And the banks managers and their families there, all the shops had their families living there. So that's where we played football. We played football in the streets. And as Davy Hyland has mentioned there, the advances that we made in football pitches, when I think that behind the cathedral, we played on the road, just put our coats down in the road and kicked football, because the nearest place I could go to was the rope walk on High Street, and it was just a rock. That's what you were playing. You were playing on lumps of hard soil. So the improvements that have been made that you mentioned there in sports, but tourism too has moved on. We attended last week. We attended the fair in Dublin, promoting tourism in Newry and Mourne. And hopefully, I raised an issue at the council last week where the new brand is Gullion and Mourne. So I'm hoping to get Newry included in that, because it brings a lot of people.
I think that's a whole new discussion.
It's a whole new discussion, but it brings in the people come in. If the people come into the centre of Newry, then everyone, if Newry's doing well, everybody does well. It springs out then to go to the rest of the Mournes and the South Armagh.
Well, just going back to looking at Newry over the last 40 years, Councillor McArdle, with the closing down of the port and that a lot of jobs went then. In fact, Newry was one of the unemployment black spots, you would say.
In my young days,
in fact, it was running at 29% at one
That's
stage.
right. In my young days,
do you think with the emergence of the WIN concept work in Newry, where people got together and actually formed a cooperative, do you think that was a good idea?
A marvellous idea. I mean, and again, another vitally important factor, and I was a founding member and director for years, was Newry Credit Union. So I'll give you an example. First Derivatives now, they're a multi-million pound company. They left London, Aidan Toner and that chap Conlon. They left London, come to Newry. They couldn't get money from anyone to start them off. Newry Credit Union loaned them £5,000. Now they're a multi-million effort. They come from all over the world to work for them. So you can, between Glen Electric, Norbrook, First Derivatives, and is it MGM? In other words, I always believed that this part of the country, southeast of the province, we weren't getting anything south of Dunmurry. Didn't happen. We weren't getting a fair crack of the whip, and I still believe on a broad front that's the case. So the Newry people and Newry entrepreneurs,
well, that's what
they have lifted themselves.
There's always been a spirit of entrepreneurship in Newry. Do you think the council has, supported that?
The council, of course, has been a major contributory factor to that.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's any chance, Jackie's relation there, is it Martin Patterson? These people have done tremendous work in the promotion of Newry PLC. That is vitally important. And the other fact, we're here in relation to legacy, I found I never drove, and that was a disadvantage. But I suddenly discovered on reflection, it's a massive advantage. I had access, people had access to me morning, noon and night. I was down the town 2-3 times a day, and they could stop you. Whereas my wife said to me this morning, when you're in a car, you're driving past people, but whenever you're walking, people have access. So in relation to accessibility, people had access to me morning, noon and night.
Well, just staying on economic development and inward investment, we got city status in 2002. Do you think that was, did that put us on the world map as far as inward investment was concerned, or was it a good thing?
Well, because of my politics,
it was your year, was it?
Yeah, so my year, and followed by Frank.
Yes.
And Frank actually went over and received the nomination from our Highness.
Do you think
my politics were more Republican, and I wouldn't be such a... But I also saw the attributes that came as a result of city status.
Yeah.
Maybe they haven't been as great as they should be, because sometimes, and this was shown in the recent debate over the naming of the new council, I mean, at one stage, Newry wasn't even going to be mentioned. And it was a disgrace, because Newry is the pivotal area of it, and has always been, even before city status. But with city status, you would say that the only city in this immediate neighbourhood would have to be in the new name. And we had to fight, Newry councillors had to have to fight to get that name registered and to be included. But just back on tourism, Henry, one of my briefs as a sort of local politician was that every July and August I would have groups coming to Newry to visit the area, part political, part educational, part holiday. These include people from the Basque Country and from Norway, from North American visitors. And they always said to me, that they thought the area was really outstanding, that there was tremendous attributes there, that there was great features in the locality, and that people above all else were really friendly and welcoming, and they always left the area with a view of coming back. And I always thought that was said something about this district and about the people of the district.
Well, I think that's right, and I think we'd all agree with that. Newry people are really friendly, and they do have that welcoming attitude to strangers, don't they, really?
That's right. A lot of the people over the years, when policemen come here, or priests coming in there, clergymen coming in, they always would say, look, the best town to come to in Ireland was Newry, because they were always welcoming. Can I say that over the years, it's amazing how Newry has grown. When I came into work in the council in '64, the population was less than 13,000. It was 12,500 in the urban area. Now that is extended to over in the Greater Newry area. There's almost 40,000. So I think that's due to economic development. It's due to, has been mentioned there, to the entrepreneurs that was in Newry, because Newry was all. I remember asking a question in the council a number of years ago. There was always this policy, whether it was fact or fiction, that if a developer wanted to come to Northern Ireland, or an entrepreneur, and spend vast amounts of money, and he asked to come to Newry, he would be persuaded to go to Belfast or Derry. Now, I didn't know if that was true or not until the Invest Northern Ireland come to a meeting in the council, and I asked them, and they admitted that it was. That is their policy for the direct the inward investment to Belfast or Derry first. Now, what happened was that the likes of the Wind Industrial Estate and the entrepreneurs that we had here, they championed the small businesses. And their view was that if you get 100 small businesses with 10, 15 or 20 people, it was as good as any big development coming in here. And that was something I was very proud of in this area.
Well,
linked in that point too, Hilary, was the number of people coming from Eastern Europe into Newry recently. Right. And the fact that the council has responded to that by setting up ethnic minorities officers, and by realising that these people are now part of our new community, and many of them will stay here. I find that I teach out in the Abbey, and the number of young fellas that are coming through with Newry accents but with foreign names.
And they're going to make this their home.
And it's amazing. Yeah. And they really are an asset to it. And I think in the future, these people will be a great asset. I mean, only today up in our council, there's the celebration of the Chinese New Year.
Right, yes.
And there must be 50 or 60 Chinese people up there at the moment. And they are all working in Newry, bringing employment in Newry, but also getting a living out in Newry. And I think that says a lot about our
There's
community.
another factor also. The churches have played their part in relation to language. St Vincent de Paul and the Church of Ireland, they have schools, they have opportunities for our young people, our young Spanish, the various ethnic Latvians, the various ethnic communities where they can go, and they're doing tremendous work. And you don't hear tell of this really, but
No,
it's
it's
going
not.
on, and that's vitally important.
Well, anyway, just before we finish, you've all been mayors of the council, or you've been mayors. What has been your highlight of your career with the council? I'm sure there's some things that you remember.
I had a particular highlight as mayor of the council. In July the 12th, 2012, I had the privilege of going down Hill Street at Walworth, of welcoming the worshipful master of the local Orange Order, the local preceptory, and wished them all the best in the celebration of their culture. It never happened before, and the chances are it'll never happen again. But the emphasis was to celebration, and for them to celebrate their culture, but that we were wishing them all the best, because they're a vitally important part of our community. So it was the cross-community effort, and I always believed in cross-community, just like my colleagues did. And it's action, it's not just words.
Thanks. Jack, what's been your highlight of your career?
Many highlights,
Many
but one in particular was the year of the St Patrick's Day parade, when every year previous to that the mayor would travel in a car or an open carriage, and I decided then that I would walk with some of the special needs children from the gateway and from the various community groups, and to walk the whole of the area with them. And one particular child in particular who had almost 50 operations over the years and had lost the sight of one eye and had various brain tumours, and took my hand and walked the whole way right the whole city, and that was my highlight.
And I remember another one of yours. It was in your year, Jack, when Banjo Bannon climbed Everest. That was a great day in Newry.
That was a great day in Newry.
But a great day of celebration, and Newry man doing something.
That is correct.
Fantastic.
That was the other one.
That was another one. What about you, Davy? What was your highlight?
Somebody asked me what was like being Lord Mayor of the year, and I said it's been a nightmare. But no, seriously, something linked into Jack. My year as Lord Mayor or Chairman of the Council coincided with the Special Olympics.
That's
and
right. Yes.
we were twinned, it came to Dublin, but we were twinned with Iceland. And we actually decided to go out to Iceland and to meet up with the Icelandic people. They in turn came to us, and they were based in Drummondine and also in Mullaban. And again, they were overwhelmed by the generosity of the spirit of the Newry people, and we forged great links with those people.
That was a great time as well. Just very, very briefly, Jack and Jack and John, you are going off now. You're retiring from politics.
Well,
what are you going to do with yourselves? What are you going to miss?
Well, first of all, it was a privilege.
Briefly.
It was a privilege to stand, to be represented, to be chosen by my party, the SLP, as a candidate. It was a privilege to serve. And we'll miss it. When people say, "Oh, now I'm looking forward to retiring, but I'm going to miss all my friends, Davy and Jack and all that," because we had some fantastic camaraderie, and all sections of the council, some highlights and some lowlights. But it was a marvellous. It was a whole. It was opening up a whole new realm in our lives.
Good.
So in other words, it's like life is a story. You're opening one chapter and closing another. So we're closing a chapter of our lives. But I'm highly involved at the moment in the Dominican project in Dominic Street, raising funds over the next couple of years. I'm looking forward to that. But I'm looking forward to giving a bit more time to Patricia.
Yes,
my
indeed.
wife,
What about
and
you,
boys.
Jack? What are
Yes, well, my plans is to take it easy. I'm in greyhound business.
You
Keep
go to
a
the
few
dogs.
horses. I'll come to the dogs more often, but they have to be in the
Never
office.
get them.
But I'll give you a tip: stay away from them. Stay away from them.
I'm waiting for the first step.
But no, I had many happy times. Frustrated at many times when you maybe didn't get the something that you planned to get within the council. But I have to say, my colleagues, as an independent councillor, where it was SDLP, Sinn Féin, or the unionist parties, I got support for them all in various things. If I worked with all of them. Good. And that was one of the nice things about being an independent. And I think I'll miss the council, because when you're 50 years as an officer and a councillor, it's a big part of your life gone. So,
well, Davy, you're left to carry the torch into the new council.
Well, as you know, it's been meeting for the last year or so. It comes into being on the 1st of April. Some people say it's very appropriate, all fools.
Yeah.
But I hope it will be a success. I had some misgivings at the beginning, because we had all hoped for, as Newry people, that there would be a new civic centre in Newry, and that the council would be based primarily in Newry. But I think we also have to take in recognition that most of the councillors actually come from County Down and are based in that Downpatrick area. So it does involve a wee bit of hassle in terms of travelling. It's an hour-long journey to Downpatrick and an hour back. And if you're somebody like me who travels most of the time on a bike, it poses some difficulties. But I think the new council structures do make a bit of sense. 26 council areas for such a small area as North Ireland was too many. And 11 is a more appropriate number. Okay. Some people said maybe it would be better twinned with Armagh, and maybe.
But that's
gone now.
It's gone now.
So we'll just have to work on it and make sure that the future is bright for Newry and its people.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Jack
Pleasure.
and John. All the best in your retirement. Davy, good luck in the new council.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, coming up after the break, I'll be speaking to Councillor Frank Feely, Newry City Councillor. See you then.
So, you want local Newry and Mourne TV shows on your television? Which video box should you buy? Well, you have two options. Option 1 provides you as long as you have a good internet connection in your home, with all the programmes from destinationnewry.com, including
inside the fencing when we were up there. That's such a change. And the dog muck.
Destination Newry. Radio evolved.
Hello, your weather for today and tomorrow with Destination Newry. Today.
First, this is Newry News Bite.
Well, what's crack in Newry and Mourne today? We all had a great September weather-wise.
We're going to go straight into today's show with a lively set of tunes from a band called Sam.
Well, good morning. Welcome to Destination Newry.
Tell me the provenance of that. Where did it come from?
Director, and welcome back to the studio.
Good afternoon and welcome along to Destination Wellbeing. My guest is Hi everyone and welcome to this week's Newry's Loose Women with me.
Well, it's hello and welcome once again to the programme. My name is Tommy Sands.
And the pulse of the house of our God. Praise to Lord.
Philip Rogan, brother, wearing number 19.
Evening everybody, and you're very welcome to Newry Showgrounds tonight again.
So that's option 1, and to choose this, click on option 1 below, or you can go to vario.ie and buy option 1. Option 2 provides you, as long as you have a good internet connection in your home, everything you get for option 1, including all the programmes from destinationnewry.com, plus you will be able to add over 1,000 private or public channels at the touch of a button, most of which are free. So that's option 2. To buy, click below and buy option 2, or go to vario.ie and buy option 2. To choose your option, either option 1 or 2, just click on the buttons below, or you can go to vario.ie and click on option 1 or 2. When we receive your payment, we will deliver your box to your home, and all you need to do is plug it in and connect it to your TV and your internet. Any problems? We're here on standby to help.
Welcome back, and I'm joined now in the studio by Councillor Frank Feely, Newry City Councillor. Frank, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Let me take you right back. You're obviously not a Newry man. You were born in Culshemuck in County Mayo.
That's exactly right. I'm a blow-in, as they call it.
What kind of a family were you born into? Was it a political family or?
Absolutely no way. Small shopkeeper. Father was a plasterer, mother was a small shopkeeper, and there was 5 in the family. I was the eldest, and I had another brother who was a builder, and 3 sisters, 2 of them who joined the nuns.
Oh, very good.
So we were a very religious family.
And you were educated in Galway then?
I was educated in Culshemuck by the Louis nuns in primary school, and then later went to university in Galway, and after that to Maynooth, where I did a postgraduate. And then I came north to St Coleman's College.
Come north? Was that in the late 50s?
In the late 50s, yes. I came north to teach in St Coleman's College.
And that was your first teaching job?
It was indeed,
and how
yes.
did you enjoy St Coleman's?
I enjoyed it very much. It was there was a lot of clergy in it at the time. Lay people were just beginning to get into teaching, and as vocations were dropping, but there was still quite a number of priests there. I was employed by Canon Pettit, who was a very famous South Down man, an Irish scholar, and the fact that I could speak some Irish meant that I got the job
pretty easily.
Yes.
Good.
I got a job teaching history and English. Yeah.
And you were there for how many years?
I was there for 15 years.
In fact, you're a bit of a legend, I believe, in St Coleman's, weren't you?
Some people would say that. I was very lucky insofar as I got good results and nobody ever failed A level, and that sort of created a bit of a legend of its own, you know.
And when did you decide then to go into politics, or what was the decision that brought you?
Well, I was really lured into it through the civil rights movement. The most iconic movement of my whole life has been the civil rights movement. And I got involved in that and joining the Newry committee.
That was back in the 60s?
Back in the 60s, yes. And the fight for one man, one vote, one person, one vote. And
Seamus Mallon and
yeah, John Hume, yeah.
John Hume would have been
Austin Corrie. All those were friends of mine.
And they were all on the political scene at the time?
They were, yes. They were MPs at the time. And John Hume in particular asked me on numerous occasions would I stand in 73 for the Assembly, for the Power Sharing Assembly as it was known, although it only lasted 6 months.
And you did actually stand?
And I did.
You were...
But the old unionists had a law that if you were a teacher you had to hand in your resignation along with your nomination. And that meant my job was gone, and the same with Seamus Mallon and John Hume himself.
That must have been a very big decision for you too.
It was a huge decision because I had a wife and 3 kids, and I paid a very, very high price for it in later life, and so did my family.
And then you decided to go into local politics. When was that?
That was in the 80s, late 80s, yes. I stood for Newry Mourne Council, yes, and got elected. I fought, 11 elections altogether between the Assembly and the Council, and I won 10 of them.
Good.
The last one.
And what was your main area of interest when you came into local government?
Well, what appalled me when I came to Newry was the terrible conditions of the housing and lack of housing, repairs and so on. I thought the place was incredibly run down, and for most of the public houses, or for most of the houses,
housing,
council houses. So there were no, there were only outside toilets and so on, and I found that very hard to accept. And I couldn't believe the size of the unemployment. 40% unemployment. So they were the two things that I concentrated on in the 70s, and I had quite a bit of success, I think, in the field of housing. And eventually we got a housing manager here from Belfast, Billy McGivern, and there were many other great ones as well, but he in particular built over 600 houses, and that began to make a difference to the local people. And constantly I was going to housing executive every single Wednesday for years and years with people.
A lot of people on the waiting list.
On the waiting list, hundreds of people on the waiting list, yes.
And do you think the council, you know, your position as a councillor helped those people to move into housing? And
I think so. I think it did. The 80s, as you say, brought more unemployment, but I was lucky insofar as in the late 70s and that I met Martin Naughton at a folk night in Mark McLaughlin's bar in Dundalk, and he asked me, he had just finished working in an electrical factory, and he asked me was there any grants available, and I told him there was a new body set up called LEDU, Local Enterprise Development Unit, that had built new factories and were renting them cheap and would provide grants for workers, and that started. That was the start of. I set up the interviews for him with Tom Short and went with him on at least 3 or 4 of the early ones until he got all the grants through and got established, and I'm very proud of that because
he was one of the
biggest in the world now today.
Yeah.
He was. He still is.
One of the biggest employers.
That's right. He was. And I also was involved and I was asked to set up a factory for 2 local people. One of them was Rooney from Warren Point, and the other one was Desi Reevy from Newry. Set up freezer meats.
Right.
Kevin
So
Rooney.
economic development was one of your things as well.
Oh, very much so. I led a big march around Newry for work, for employment, after several fly-by-night factories that only came for the grants, and as soon as they got the grants, they closed down.
Yeah, I was talking about the WIN concept, the cooperative.
I think the WIN concept was, yes, it was. Self-help was very, very important in Newry because it brought together members of the credit union, and it brought shopkeepers and others who to contribute on a weekly basis, and the ordinary people of Newry give £1 or 50p or whatever they could afford every single week, and you could see the graph rising there outside Woolworths.
That must have been very exciting.
It was. It was a very exciting time to see that that in spite of all that unionism had done to destroy the town, that the people were able to help themselves and get started and get employment going, and that served as a catalyst to others that came into the town and started in business. And I helped a number of them to start, including Norbrook. I advised Eddie Hahey on the grants that were available. He had a small factory next door to Freezer Meats, and I got him his first chemist. The late Mick Bray, who was a chemist in the college and who worked for him at the weekends. And
now he's one of the biggest.
He's probably the biggest in Newry, yeah.
We were just speaking earlier on about Newry getting city status in 2002. It was yourself, a Mayo man, accepting the charter from the Queen, which must have been
well,
but do you think it was a good thing for Newry to get
I do,
city
yes.
status?
I do, actually, yes. I think that I think we'd be ignored and passed by entirely if we didn't. I mean, the opportunity was offered, and the business people, particularly the Chamber of Commerce, decided that we should go for it. It wasn't entirely a council decision, it was more a business decision. And it did help exports and all that because people could identify people that live in foreign parts and were buying products from Newry, etc., were able to identify more with the city than, you know, with the town. And as I say, Chamber of Commerce in particular, Fergal McCormick, and
Barry Owens, I think it was
Barry Owens was one of the main motivators in that, and the owner of the Keys,
Gerard O'Hare,
was very, very important in financing that and setting up the organisation that led to city status. And one of the good things about it was that it brought together people from every walks of life in Newry and every occupation to go on the delegations to Dublin, London and Belfast to look for city status. And the Secretary of State at the time was John Reid. What was his first name?
Reid.
Reid.
John Reid, was it?
John Reid, Scotland.
He was Scottish Secretary of State, and he was very impressed by Newry Cathedral. He said he took a special interest in cathedrals in Europe and around the world, and he said it was one of the greatest cathedrals he had seen. And he couldn't believe the gold inlay and the way that it was done so perfectly. And some of the locals explained to him that it was done by Italians. When the local people in Newry, tradesmen, tried to watch to see how it was done, they closed it all off and put
well, anyhow, there must have
sacking round it so that they couldn't see how it was done, like, you know, and that and the hotel.
Yes,
the
it was a
Canal Court Hotel.
Great asset to Newry.
It was a great asset.
Yes. Give me another one then, another highlight. Just keep
Well, as a blow-in leading the St. Patrick's Day Parade and walking around Newry, to me, was extraordinary, and I'll never forget that to my dying day. Like, I would thank the people of Newry who constantly, over the years, elected me.
Good. Well, you're going to be retiring now, Frank.
Yes, I am.
Will you miss the council?
Oh, absolutely. I'll miss the camaraderie, I'll miss the debate, I'll miss the opportunities to help people, because as a member of the SDLP party, and we worked as a party, and we had a great advice centre in Newry, which did a lot of constituency work, and over the years, as I say, I did a lot of work on housing executive, doing tribunals, etc., planning, site meetings as they were then, and I'll miss all that relationship with other councillors and other parties that I had built up over the years and had many excellent friends.
What are you going to be doing in your retirement? Have you any plans?
I think...
Any plans?
I think paying more attention to my wife.
To your lovely Ella, yes, I think.
Who suffered with me for 40 years.
Absolutely.
And babysitting and doing some gardening and hopefully getting a few holidays that we never got in the past.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Frank, for coming into the studio. Thanks. And the best of luck in your retirement. Thank you.